What about Major Kong?
Let's face it, the threat of hydrogen bomb warfare is the greatest danger our nation has ever known. Enemy jet bombers carrying nuclear weapons can sweep over a variety of routes and drop bombs on any important target in the United States.
Excavations of new harbors, big dams, canals, passes through rugged mountainous terrain. These and other massive, imaginative, earth-moving projects may soon be ours. Created in seconds with the tremendous energy of the peaceful atom. Nuclear explosives for large projects that are simply not feasible with conventional methods and at considerably less expense. Scientists and engineers today are carefully working toward these goals with a series of nuclear excavation experiments designed to increase their knowledge and skills in this exciting new concept. They call their program Plowshare. It is a deliberate, careful, scientific program. Cratering and excavation through the use of nuclear explosives. The peaceful atom, a tool to move a mountain.
It was a strange love affair with the end of the world, the thought of mutually assured destruction, and the wonders of nuclear power. Up next on Cold War Icons, the Strangelove factor of how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Next on Cold War Icons. It was a cold Arctic morning on October 30th, 1961. For Red Air Force Major Andrei Dernenstev, a Tupolev Tu-95 pilot, it would be no ordinary day. For it was on this day that his bear was laden with an extra 27 metric tons of burdened weight. This weight was object RDS-220. The object was too large to fit in the bomb bay, so it had to be underslung underneath the fuselage. He would take off and proceed north. His target today would become Sukhoi Nos, or Dry Nose, Cape of Zarevny Island of Novaya Zelemnya, a chain of islands in the Russian Arctic Sea. At 34,000 feet, the object was released. It was attached to a massive parachute to allow the object to fall free from the aircraft and provide him time to escape. Which, in all honesty, was just wishful thinking. The parachute would allow the bear to escape roughly 29 miles. The fireball and the initial explosion from this object would be roughly 8 kilometers. However, the shockwave and blast would far outreach that range, almost 30 miles. So his odds of survival were not that great. At an altitude of 3,900 meters, the object detonated. It created a fireball and blast 8 kilometers wide. The shockwave destroying buildings nearly 30 to 40 miles away. The heat from the blast could be felt on your skin up to 170 miles away, or roughly 270 kilometers. Windows were broken in Norway and Finland, and a shockwave would travel the world several times over. Object RDS-220 is better known in the West, and to the rest of the world, as Tsar Bomba, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever tested, and to this day ever built, with an estimated yield by the United States at the time of 58 megatons. However, it would later be shown that it was actually 50 megatons by the Russians themselves. This monster bomb had a name, Ivan. Very Russian. See, this is the lunacy that had come about. The bomb itself was really a show of force by Khrushchev. You see, they only ever built one of these. He built it to show the sword of Damocles over the heads of the imperial capitalists. Well, that's what he said, but I digress. You see, Tsar Bomba, or Object RDS-220, was completely impractical in a military sense. Not only did it leave the plane vulnerable to not only self-suicide, the bomb was completely exposed. Any sort of light anti-aircraft fire could completely annihilate it. On top of that, the energy produced by the explosion was technically wasted, as the shockwave doubled in on itself. The fireball couldn't even reach the ground. You see, the bomb was a publicity stunt. It was a publicity stunt in its most purest and true form. But that's the Russian way. Welcome to Cold War Icons. My name is Alice, and today we are discussing the Strangelove factor. This odd perversion with the end of the world and devices built to do that. So, I'm not really sure how I'm going to format this whole episode right now, but just try to bear with me. I think what we're going to do here is we're going to jump around through the decades and just talk about some of the crazy doomsday machines that both sides built. On top of the doomsday machines, we're going to briefly mention the US program of Plowshare, a peaceful use of the nuclear atom. So, after mentioning Tsar Bomba, I don't really think I need to mention it again. So, publicity stunt handled. Let's move on to the United States. Let's see what sort of crazy shit we, capitalist pigs, came up with. And for the record, that's satirical. I'm a staunch anti-communist. I digress. Let's go. Now hold on. Let's fast forward the clock to 1983.
What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies? I know this is a formidable technical task, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century. I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete.
The old Gibster is in the White House, and he just dropped a bomb on the Soviet Union, called the Strategic Defense Initiative. But we know it in the United States as Star Wars. It was a science fiction fantasy that would render all nuclear weapons on the planet irrelevant. You can't have a deterrent force if you can't use it, especially if it gets destroyed by laser beams in space. It was an absolute wonder of technology. Now on paper it looked good, but it wasn't really feasible yet. However, technology had caught up that some of these ideas might have been possible. But we're here about the Strangelove factor, right? We'll hear about that perverse fascination when you get the weapons. Well, for that, we have to talk about a rail car. Yeah, satellites and all that shit. I just really wanted this transition. Okay, let's keep going. Along with the Strategic Defense Initiative, part of Ronald Reagan's defense buildup was the procurement of the B-1 Lancer and the MX missile. Now, the MX was designed to be a second strike. It was designed from the ground up to be a survivable weapon system and launch a counterattack should the United States ever be hit. The idea being that since the missile had a massive MIRV count of 10 warheads, you could adopt 100 missiles for 1,000 warheads, or 200 missiles for 2,000 warheads. No matter what happened to the United States, if the peacekeepers could survive, you're fucked. And since it was designed to be survivable, it had to find a way to hide itself too. So, on December 19, 1986, the White House announced President Ronald Reagan's approval to develop a rail system for basing part of the Peacekeeper Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Force. To increase survivability of the force, 50 Peacekeepers would be deployed in existing Minuteman silos, and 50 more would be mounted on 25 USAF trains, 2 per train. Each train would consist of 2 locomotives, 2 security cars, 2 missile launch cars housing the missiles, 1 launch control car, 1 fuel car, and 1 maintenance car. Each launch car carried 1 Peacekeeper ICBM, and a launch tube that could be elevated to fire the missiles from the bed of the car. Overall body length of the launch car is 87 feet, and fully loaded it weighed more than 5,200,000 pounds. The trains would be located in shelters located on Strategic Air Command bases throughout the continental United States. With the missiles on continuous strategic alert, when necessary, the trains could be dispersed into the nation's rail network, making it extremely difficult for an enemy to target and destroy them. Development of the rail garrison system was terminated in 1991, as Cold War tensions eased. Major contractors for the rail garrison system were Boeing Aerospace, Westinghouse Marine Division, and Rockwell International. Now, this isn't the first time a country has tried to base missiles on a train-based system. The Soviets also built one around the same time as the Peacekeeper for their SS-24 Scalpel. It had a similar 10 Merc warhead design, and was also based around the premises of flooding your massive rail network with missiles that would be impossible to target from space. But just like the Peacekeeper, it was decommissioned in 2005. But unlike the Peacekeeper, these actually entered service. Now, this really isn't as much of a doomsday weapon to me as it is just really fascinating. It's just a cool combination of trains and world-ending technology, so maybe it is a little bit world-ending. But for me personally, the technological part of the Peacekeeper that I enjoy so much is how much it's basically like an SLBM on the land. So if you weren't aware, alright, the thing that separated the Peacekeeper from the US Minuteman III is that the Peacekeeper is ejected from its silo before it is actually ignited and launched into space. Basically like a submarine launch missile. It uses compressed gas in a canister that just shoots it out. Unlike the Minuteman III, which ignites its boosters inside the silo itself. It allows the Peacekeeper, God forbid, to be allowed to be reloaded and also preserve and protect the silo more. It's just really cool stuff. Now guys, we are going to rewind the clock now to the late 1950s, while Nikita Khrushchev was still in office. And you'll have to forgive me for this one, because I've been trying to find more info on it, and I really just can't get anything. I've been looking on the internet all day right now, and I still can't get a single article on this, unless I've just been missing it like a fucking idiot. And if you've ever met me, that really is an actual large possibility. But we're going to play a quick clip on just what I'm talking about, and then we'll summarize my thoughts. Now, what we are going to talk about is the only... I think I can probably say with enough confidence that this is probably the only actual design ever of a real-life doomsday machine. People like to throw doomsday machine up with nukes all the time, but this device was designed to destroy the planet. That was its sole purpose. It's not a nuclear missile, it's nothing like that. It's just so out there and bizarre. So if you guys can find any more information for me to talk about this, I'd love to do more on it. But here we go.
Но был еще более страшный, более дикий проект.
But there was another even more terrible savage project, codenamed Doomsday. It was developed as the ultimate measure. If we lose a war, if communism is dying, why should anybody survive? The project was to design a bomb, which if exploded, would cause all life on Earth to be terminated.
Эту бомбу предполагалось сделать в большом корабле.
This bomb was to be built inside a huge ship. The Ivan bomb, some 30 feet in length, had shocked the entire world. This nuclear device would destroy it. The ship itself would be the bomb. The entire hold would be filled with fissionable material. The structure of the vessel and the water it sailed in would vaporize. It would fill Earth's atmosphere with a radioactive cloud. The ship was to sail along the Soviet borders, its meters constantly monitoring radiation levels. If ever they registered radiation that indicated nuclear apocalypse in the Soviet Union, they would automatically trigger the monstrous bomb. Mankind would be destroyed. But the bomb to end the world would be automatic, out of control. Even a Cold War risk-taker such as Khrushchev could not take that risk. He banned the idea. The doomsday machine was never built.
Holy shit, dude. This is like some Dr. Evil level of shit that you'd send Austin Powers in after to stop. Or James Bond. It would have been, yeah, I could see it as a Pierce Brosnan film. Not necessarily Sean Connery. Maybe Roger Moore. Yeah, I could see Roger Moore doing it. But I would love to meet Mojo Jojo or the Dr. Evil they had locked away in his laboratory and just pick his brains for a while. I mean, God bless the Soviet leadership for not going through with this crap, but holy hell, dude. 1991 would have been a very different year than what it turned out to be. I mean, think about it. Nirvana's Nevermind came out. The Seattle grunge movement is in full swing. The Gulf War is kicking off. And then all of a sudden, on the 8th of December, the Soviet Union just collapses. Well, no more Earth. Because communism just fucking died. Like it should. Ah, man, what a mess. You know, we started this episode with Tsar Bomba. You know, one thing I didn't mention is that the Americans had one too. Yeah, we did. Wasn't as big, but it was probably, actually, not even probably, it was more efficient than Tsar Bomba. And it turned out it was one of the most efficient nuclear weapons ever built. Let's jump in to the B-41 and the B-53.
The importance of the dismantlement of the B-53 is a symbol of the transition of our nuclear enterprise. We have defended the nation's liberty, defended our freedom for decades through the arsenal that the B-53 formed a part of. In that arsenal, the B-53 had a unique role as the largest bomb that we had. Now, in the aftermath of President Obama articulating a vision of a world without nuclear weapons and calling for us to make less use of nuclear weapons and use less of them, the dismantlement of this final B-53 is testimony to the seriousness of President Obama's commitment and that the United States is delivering on that commitment.
B-53 was put into America's stockpile in 1962. It supported the B-52G program. It was carried by the big airplanes, the B-52s. It is a massive weapon. It's about the size of a minivan. It weighs 10,000 pounds. And its role in the deterrent for many years, you know, for the peak of the Cold War, throughout the 60s and the 70s, was just to have a very large nuclear ordnance or very large bomb as a part of the deterrent. Such a terrible bomb, in fact, that it would prevent large-scale conventional war.
This is a significant accomplishment that shows that we can actually act as one in NSA. That when challenged, we can come together as a team and overcome the technical challenges without being too worked up on who's the Fed, who's the contractor, the design agencies. When we're in a team setting, it's all about getting the work done. It's all about getting the mission accomplished, and we're at our best when we do that.
So the 53 dismantlement effort represents a significant achievement not only for the Pantex workforce and the fact that they were willing to step up when I challenged them back in 2010 to see if they could develop a plan that would achieve this goal for NNSA. The Pantex workers were willing to step up, and at the same time we had to have the national laboratories as well as the other production sites that played a role in this dismantlement effort to support Pantex. So this was really a team effort, and the team at Pantex was willing to take the challenge and develop a plan that could be executed providing we got the support from the national laboratories and other production sites. And then we did rely heavily on the other production sites and national laboratories to support us through this effort. So this was truly a team effort for NNSA.
The important part of the NNSA mission that the B-53 fits into is the part in which we are ensuring a safe, secure, and effective deterrent. We are in a very different strategic posture from what we faced during the Cold War. And in fact, President Obama's leadership has led to the development of a new nuclear posture review in which for the first time We put stopping nuclear weapons proliferation and nuclear terrorism at the top of the reason why we still have our arsenal. Now, the B-53 is part of a different time. During the Cold War, we were looking at the possibility of nuclear Armageddon, of a massive strike between the United States and the Soviet Union, in which at the end of the day people talked about pounding the rubble. We would have so many bombs dropping. And to have these large minivan-sized bombs carried by B-52s, that's part of that vision and part of that threat scenario. The threats that we face today are very, very different. And even as NNSA has been called upon by the President, by the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Energy, to make sure that we have a modern, secure and effective deterrent, the B-53 no longer plays the same kind of role that was needed during those Cold War years. So as we are looking for sustaining the second strike survivability, for example, of our W-76s that are carried on our SLBMs, the life extension program for the W-76 is very important. As we're looking at the need to replace our old and aging CMRR and UPS facilities, recapitalization is a very important part of NNSA's futures. As we look at the need to make sure we maintain the kind of scientific expertise and depth and breadth needed to keep that arsenal safe, secure, and effective in a non-testing environment, we need to really invest in the scientists and the nuclear security enterprise. The B-53 is part of an older era, much more oriented toward production, much more oriented toward a vision of a possibility under the theory of mutual assured destruction of a massive nuclear exchange, far more part of our past than hopefully part of the more modernized deterrent that we're building for the future.
One thing I would tell the public about the B-53 is that although this bomb served the American deterrent very well for several decades, from 1962 through 1997, I am very pleased that we're taking the last one apart. Its yield was so massive. Its size, the size of a minivan, its weight more than 10,000 pounds. We had to develop special training, special tooling to take this weapon system apart. And the consequence for not doing this safely would be that people would really be hurt. So I'm pleased that we're getting the last one taken apart.
Now, I know the video you just saw was about the B-53 type weapon, and I do apologize for that, but it's really close to the B-41, as I can't really find any footage of the B-41. So I hope you'll just enjoy some pretty beautiful nighttime shots of a hydrogen bomb going off. I'm sure they'll suffice. I'll throw some pictures up, though, to clarify. The B-41, or Mark 41, was a thermonuclear weapon deployed by the Strategic Air Command in the early 60s. It was, and still is, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever developed by the United States, with a maximum yield of 25 megatons. The B-41 was also the only three-stage nuclear weapon fielded by the U.S. Development began in 1955, with a requirement for a Class B, or high yield, over 10,000 pounds, or, for those of you without a flag on the moon, 4,500 kilogram weapon. Two versions of this weapon were deployed. A Y-1, or a dirty version, with a tertiary stage encased with U-238, which is natural uranium, and a Y-2, a clean version with a lead-encased tertiary. It was the highest yield nuclear weapon ever fielded by the United States, and it remains the highest yield to weight ratio of any weapon created. The U.S. claimed in 1968 it could produce a 35 megaton fusion bomb, and put it on a Titan II, almost doubling the yield to weight ratio of the B-41. The B-41 was of the usual long cylindrical shape. The nuclear fusion warhead was of the Teller-Ulam type and used a 40 to 100 kiloton implosion type nuclear fission primary, fueled by HEU to trigger the lithium-6 deuteride, I'm sorry guys, I can't say these words, fusion fuel. B-41 was what you'd say is an example of fission, fusion, fusion type of thermonuclear weapon, or tertiary stage bomb. Additional tertiary fusion stage compressed of a previous fusion stage, and could be used to make a bomb with yields as large as desired. What's really impressive is that the B-41 is still the world's most efficient thermonuclear weapon, in terms of a yield to actual weight, with a 5.2 megaton ratio based on a 25 megaton yield. Its blast yield was 25 to 50% that of the Tsar Bomba, which, depending on how they set it up, could produce a blast of 50 to 100 megatons, depending on its own configuration. However, even at the Tsar Bomba's theoretical maximum yield of 100 megatons, it would still only achieve a yield to weight ratio of 3.7 megaton per ton. Thus, the B-41 is the most efficient, highest yield to weight ratio weapon ever created. However, since neither full yield versions of the B-41 nor Tsar Bomba were ever demonstratedly tested, the B-41's high efficiency is merely theoretical. The most efficient tested and proven nuclear physics package is the W-56 warhead. It's not all power to weight ratios. Even with your Mustangs, it still applies to nuclear weapons. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. I am so sorry this took so long to make. My life has been a whirlwind of just crap and nonsense that I've had to deal with. I just left active service and I'm trying to put my life together right now. None to worry about, the channel's not going anywhere, but I'm just going to have to find time for content when I can make it. So thank you so much. The subscriber count keeps climbing and I can't thank you guys enough for that. Mostly doing parts of the Boog videos, but I'll make some more. The key for those, I just have to be inspired. I have to find music and then a topic to really broach. And another big problem, I'm trying to recreate some of the content that got destroyed when Zuckerberg zucked my freaking channel like a lizard person. But anyway, this is Alice for Full to Gap Gaming. Thank you for tuning in today on Cold War Icons.